Thrilled to be with you. Brother Whitesell, you didn't know that I was your friend, but I'm one of his friends that is just in a situation where we're just waiting on visas to come. We've raised the majority of our support already. We're at about 98% percentage-wise, but we have been on hold. There it is. On hold since August. We submitted our visa applications and should have received them back in September, and here we are. And many times we ask, well, what's the holdup? What's going on? What's the reason? Have you ever traveled through an underwater tunnel? We did on the way over here. We do it all the time in Hampton Roads, but the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Anybody ever had the privilege of driving through that? Sometimes you see it from overhead and it's like very frightening, and people say, oh no, I'd never do that. But once you're in it, it's just any other road. You're under the water, and I'm deathly afraid of the water. But while I'm under there, I don't really see what I'm going through till I come out on the other side. And so that's sort of what a trial is like. Whenever you're in it, you don't know what's going on, you're underwater, you're confused, but then on the other side, you understand God's purpose for it. Perhaps the reason for God delaying our visas is so we could be here this morning to speak to one person sitting here listening this morning, to encourage them to surrender their lives to God for local or foreign missions. Nothing would thrill me more than that. Take your Bibles, look at it. Is it Exodus? I just finished reading Ezekiel and devotions. That's what's on my head. Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. You all wiped your brow when I changed it from Ezekiel, because that's the part of your Bible where the pages are still stuck together. But Exodus chapter 3. I want to just very quickly this morning talk about biblical excuses for not obeying God. You're like, well, I've been waiting for this message for a long time. I've been looking for some biblical excuses to not obey God. Well, now hold on a second, because when I say biblical excuses, I simply mean that they're recorded in the Bible. I don't mean that they're godly or that they're legitimate, just the fact of what some men used to say, no, God, or wait, God, which is also saying no, God, just a little more politely. I'll run through some different ones just for sake of time. We have different ones who have said, Lord, I'm too old to do what you've asked me to do. The man we're going to be reading about right here is 80 years old at the time he has this encounter with God. Abraham is 90 and then 100 even at the point when Isaac is born and the promise is fulfilled to him. Maybe I have some out here today that would say, I am too old for that kind of thing. Some of you may say, and maybe this will be more directed toward the group I'm going to in the next hour, would say, I'm too young to do that. Samuel never said that, but certainly Samuel was a young man and definitely not as qualified as Eli or his sons in being priest, yet Eli and his sons were corrupt, and Samuel had a heart committed to God. Jeremiah also said, I'm too young for this. And God said, don't say that. You may suffer from low self-esteem. Gideon is the prime example of this one, although Moses also makes a statement similar to that. And Gideon said, when the angel spoke to him and said, behold, thou mighty man of valor. Gideon's like, I'm the only one here. I think you came to the wrong wine press where I'm threshing out wheat. Don't you know I am the least of my father's house? My father's house is poor. I'm from Manasseh, which is like nearly the worst tribe. You must mean somebody else. In the New Testament, we find those who Jesus called, either in a parable or personally. The parable, when they were bidden to the wedding feast, some have said, look, I would, but I've bought a piece of ground and I've got to go see it. I've bought a yoke of oxen and I've got to go try them out. Now we look at those and both of those seem, although we buy land and we buy, well, I don't know the last time you bought oxen, but you've bought a truck or a car, which would be, oxen would be their mode of transportation, their mode of work. In both of those fields, both the land and oxen would be means of production, livelihood. And some of you may be sitting here and saying, look, I have a valid excuse for not going to the mission field. I have a job. I have a career. I have a means of production. I own my own business. I can't just walk away from that. Besides, I contribute a good bit of money to the missions program anyway. If I quit my job, then Solid Rock would be in the deficit, that much money. And you rationalize it and you say, I'm more valuable here than I ever would be to God somewhere else. Oh, well, thanks for clearing that up. Have you let God know that? Others, Christ is called and they gave him excuses of Lord, let me first bury my father. Understanding that was a figure of speech. The man's father was not dead. What he was saying is, Lord, one day I'll serve you after my father has passed away. But right now, our relationship is very good, and I could not bear to leave him. Well, Exodus chapter 3, we find Moses is the king of biblical excuses. And I want to just throw a few of these out here that he said, and maybe these are things that have gone through your head, and then I want to give you the solution to all the excuses, and then how you can start from where you are right now to being personally involved in missions. You know, they have these programs called Couch to 5K. Well, this is from the pew to the mission field. Biblical excuses. In Exodus chapter 3, we find a very clear call of God in chapter 3, verse 6. We begin to read. I will be skipping around some just for the sake of time. Exodus 3:6. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good land and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, Hivites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, all the ites. You say, all right, Brother Scott, you went to the wrong passage apparently, because this has nothing to do with the call to the mission field. This was written to a Hebrew. This is about deliverance. This is specifically for Israel. Are you trying to apply some sort of theology? Brother, you're messed up in your theology. Look, here's what I know. We have a God who recognizes a need, and he's about to do something about it. I believe we could say all those three things are the impetus for us being involved in missions. We have a God who sent his son, Jesus Christ, to seek and to save that which is lost, which demonstrates the need, and he intends to do something about it. Christ died on the cross, and then he commissioned believers to be his witnesses to go to all the world to preach the gospel to every creature. Agreed? All right. Now, in verse 10, not only does God intend to do this, he intends to do it through Moses. Verse 10, come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. We think of the young man Samuel, who answered, said, here am I. We think of Isaiah in chapter 6, where God says, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And Isaiah stands up and says, here am I, send me. And we're looking for Moses here to answer in the same way, and Moses does not answer in the same way. He answers in the opposite way. He answers with questions and excuses and reasons not to do the thing that God said. And while I would love to say that I'm sitting here speaking to a bunch of Isaiahs and Samuels, there may be some Moseses out here. Because I was a little bit of a Moses when God called me. And so we look quickly at the excuses that he gave here. First of all, in verse 11, Moses said unto God, "Who am I?" Maybe you feel like that. God, if you're calling somebody in the church, look, I know somebody else would be a lot better person than I am. Who am I? Yet God called you. Yet God is speaking to you this morning as I speak. Down in verse 13, Moses said unto God, "Behold, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them?" Moses' first question or objection is, who am I? And then Moses is essentially asking here, who are you? Wow. Who are you? Wow. And if we answer that honestly, maybe the rest of the objections would just go away. But let's keep reading here. We'll go into chapter 4, verse 1. The dialogue continues, and Moses said, "Behold, they will not believe me." They won't believe. You know, God even told Isaiah, you're going to go to a people that's not going to believe, they're not going to hear, they're not going to listen. But some will. As Brother Weitzel said, you're going to a field and they're not going to be sitting there at the airport with signs saying, "Yay, we're so happy that you're..." They're not all going to be happy that you're here. But some will be. And that's the reason that we're going. Look at chapter 4, verse 10. Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken to thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue." Many say that he possibly stuttered or had some sort of speech impediment. And maybe you say, "I am not eloquent." By the way, I'll say I'm not eloquent too. My pastor lied when he said I'm an eloquent speaker. I'm sure he was just trying to give me a compliment. I do not consider myself eloquent. I trip over my own tongue all the time. And maybe you feel the same way about yourself. "Oh no, I can't go. I make too many verbal slips and mistakes, and I just don't think that I..." God answered Moses on that one too. He says, "Who made your tongue? Who made you the way that you are? Yet I've still called you." Now verse 13, Moses does the ultimate one, which makes God infuriated. And he says, "O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send." That sounds very innocent, but what that really say? He says, "God, send somebody else." Now I want to answer all of those objections with one verse back in chapter 3. In chapter 3, verse 12, and this is the same way that God answered my objections and my excuses. This is the answer for any shortcoming, for any excuse that you have. Verse 12, God says this, and I'll focus in on 5 words. "I will be with thee." I will be with thee. There's nothing else that matters. Jeremiah 32:27, "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me?" And the answer is no. How can I take you from pew to mission field, couch to 4K? 4 quick things. Number 1, become immersed in your local church. I mean, absolutely immersed. When the doors are open, you get here. You're not going to be a part-time church member and ever be a full-time missionary. Number 2, be a soul winner. Look, don't tell me, "Well, I'd love to go over to England or Spain or wherever and win people to the Lord." Well, if you're not doing it right here in New Jersey, it's not going to be easier over there. So get over your fears and your objections and get some tracts and get yourself a New Testament and mark it up and go and win the lost right here in your community. Number 3, find a short-term missions trip you can go on. Contact any mission board, and they will be able to point you to the right people to go on a short-term mission trip. And the purpose for that is, number 4, to pray for God's specific leading. God, I am surrendered and willing to go. Now you just tell me where. And that's the point where I was in February of 2018. Lord, send me anywhere. Just show me the way. And a week later, he showed me the field of Lakenheath, England, where I could go to be able to minister to airmen and their families, as well as the British, right there in Lakenheath and Milton Hall. That's it. It's not complicated. It's just a matter of trusting and obeying. Pastor? Those 4 things again. Become immersed in your local church. Number 2, become a soul winner. And then 3, short-term mission trip. And that can help you with number 4 to help guide you into where He'll use you. And then number 4, to pray for God's specific leading. I know of a man in his late 50s in our church who has been going on short-term mission trips to Bolivia. And at this last missions conference, former Marine and current police officer who said, Lord's called us to Bolivia. And it was the worst kept secret among everybody in the church. It's like, well, yeah, of course He did. Your heart's there. The Lord's been leading you there. You've done steps 1, 2, 3, and you've been praying for God's specific leading. He took you to the place where your heart was already, and you're going to do great things for Him. Late 50s, almost 60, doesn't matter. You're not too old. You're not too young. It's not a matter of eloquence. It's not a matter of your human ability. It is, I will be with thee. Amen. And that's the answer.